The cold-rolled steel door rattled down behind them, plunging Unit 214 into a coffin of shadow and dust. The single bare bulb overhead did nothing but prove the darkness. Arthur sank to his knees, not in prayer, but because his left leg, the one with the pin in it, had given out. The grit of the concrete floor bit into his thin trousers. Beside him, Eleanor held the heavy yellow flashlight, her knuckles white, the beam dancing over stacks of cardboard boxes. The beam illuminated their history, cataloged for failure. Art's Woodcrafts, invoices, unpaid. Kathy, college, returned to sender. Eleanor, quilts, unsold. This was it. The final lockout was 9 a.m. tomorrow. They were here in the cold February dark to scavenge the last scraps of their dignity before the bank and the auctioneer picked the bones. "Just the photo albums, Art," Eleanor whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "And Mama's silver. The rest is just stuff." Arthur didn't answer. He was staring at the wall, at the spot where his heaviest mistake, a 10-drawer oak filing cabinet filled with the defunct plans of his failed business, had scraped against the floor. He'd been trying to move it just to see if there was anything behind it when his leg buckled. But the cabinet hadn't scraped concrete. It had scraped wood. He ran his fingers over the floor. There, under a layer of gray dust, wasn't a crack. It was a seam. A perfect 3-foot square. "Ellie," he rasped, his breath fogging in the frigid air. "Hold the light. Here." He pushed. The cabinet, heavy with 30 years of shame, refused. "Arthur, don't! Your heart!" "The light, Ellie." She aimed the beam. He jammed his crowbar, the only tool he'd brought, into the seam. It wasn't concrete. It was a plywood trapdoor, painted to look like concrete. He put his frail weight on the bar. A rusty hinge screamed. The door popped open an inch, releasing a blast of impossible air. It wasn't the dead, dusty air of the unit. It was cold, damp, and alive. It smelled of wet earth and mildew. Eleanor stumbled back, a small cry dying in her throat. "Close it, Arthur! My God, close it!" But Arthur couldn't. This was the first thing in 20 years that hadn't been a bill, a summons, or a foreclosure notice. He was 78 years old. He was broke. He was a failure. But he was curious. He grabbed the plywood edge and heaved. The door grated open, revealing a black square cut into the foundation. The flashlight beam dove in and found the first rung of a rough wooden ladder. It descended into absolute subterranean black. Wait, before you see what's inside. If this story already has your heart pounding, tell us where you're watching from. When forgotten boxes open, when second chances hide under dust and debt, subscribe and stay close. You'll never guess what's been left behind. Now, back to the lock clicking open. The blackness in the hole seemed to drink the flashlight's beam. Eleanor was pulling at his arm, her panic a tangible thing. "It's rats, Arthur, or snakes, or nothing. It's just a crawl space. We need the albums." "Rats didn't build a ladder, Ellie." His voice was low, trembling with something he hadn't felt since he'd first opened his workshop. Adrenaline. The smell coming up wasn't just damp. It was something else. Faint, like rust and oil. "Arthur, you can't. Your leg. You'll fall. You'll break your hip. And I can't pull you out." The words hung between them, as real and heavy as the stacked boxes. He looked at her. Her face, framed by the thin, white hair she was too proud to dye, was a mask of terror. Not of the whole, but of him. Of what one more fall, one more hospital bill would do. It would be the end. They'd be separated, put in a state home. The final humiliating punctuation mark on a life of almosts. "I'm just looking."
He said it gently. He turned and sat on the edge of the hole, his bad leg sticking out stiffly. He tested the first rung with his good foot.
It was solid, braced against the packed earth. Hold the light, steady, right on the rungs. Arthur, please, just hold the light. He grunted, his body shaking with the strain, and lowered himself onto the ladder. The wood was damp. He went down one rung, then another. The flashlight beam from above was his only star. He felt like a boy again, exploring the hayloft in his father's barn. He went down 4 rungs, 5, and his good foot touched solid ground. He looked up. Eleanor was a pale, terrified silhouette against the faint glow of the unit's single bulb. "It's a floor, Ellie. It's a tunnel." He heard her sharp intake of breath. A long, agonizing silence. Then the beam of the flashlight wavered and lowered. I'm coming," she whispered. "God help us. I'm coming. Don't you move." He watched, his heart hammering against his ribs, as she slowly, painfully, turned and lowered herself onto the ladder, her knees cracking in protest. She descended, her thin house dress catching on a splinter. When her feet touched the ground, she leaned against him, and the two of them stood shoulder to shoulder in the dark, trembling. Eleanor took the flashlight and swept it forward. It wasn't a crawl space. It was a tunnel, just high enough for Arthur to stand without quite straightening his back. The walls were packed earth, held back by scavenged sheets of corrugated tin and rotting 2x4s. It ran perfectly straight forward into the black. "It goes under the next unit," Arthur breathed, his voice reverent. Who would do this?" Eleanor whispered. "Why? I don't know." He took a step. The air was thick. "Let's go back, Art. This is someone else's business. This is trespassing. We're already trespassing, Ellie. The bank owns this floor. We don't." He took the flashlight from her. "We've come this far." He led the way. She followed, her hand clutching the back of his threadbare flannel shirt. The tunnel was maybe 40 feet long. 40 feet of damp, silent, terrifying mystery. Arthur counted his steps. He was a carpenter. He was measuring. It was about the length of 1.5 storage units. Then the tunnel ended. It opened up into a space. Eleanor gasped. "It's a room." Arthur swept the light around. It was a concrete bunker, roughly 10 feet by 10 feet. It was dry. In the corner, a pipe, probably a forgotten bit of plumbing from when the facility was built, was dripping steadily into a plastic bucket. The bucket was half full. The room wasn't empty. In one corner, a filthy cot was neatly made. At its foot, a small pyramid of canned food, beans, tuna, and peaches. A battery-powered lantern sat on an upturned crate, but it was the rest of the room that made Arthur stop breathing. It was full of things. They were sculptures, dozens of them. They were small, intricate, and made of garbage. Arthur stepped closer, the light fixed on a workbench in the back. On it, a small, perfect songbird, its wings spread, was crafted entirely from paper clips, aluminum foil, and shreds of a blue tarp. Beside it, a human face, welded together from old gears, bottle caps, and 2 chipped glass marbles for eyes. "My God," Eleanor breathed, stepping away from Arthur. She moved toward a different sculpture, one of a tiny, detailed carousel with horses made of twisted spoons. "It's art," Arthur said. The word felt strange in his mouth. "It's beautiful," Eleanor whispered. She touched the wing of the paperclip bird. This wasn't a squatter's den. This was a studio. Someone had been living here, in the dark, under their feet, turning the forgotten refuse of the storage facility into this. Who? Arthur moved the light. He saw it, hanging on the wall. It was a self-portrait, a figure life-sized, made of electrical wire, broken bits of mirror, and strips of a leather car seat. It was a man, thin, with his head bowed. And in the center of its chest, where a heart should be, was a wooden, A wooden bluebird. Arthur staggered back. He knew that bluebird. He'd carved it. It was from a batch of Art's woodcrafts that hadn't sold. One of the boxes in his unit. Sample. Do not sell. Arthur, what is it? You're white as a sheet. He pointed, his hand shaking so badly he could barely aim the light. That bird, the blue one. Ellie, that's mine. Eleanor squinted. Her hand flew to her mouth. It can't be. It is. I carved it. 1998, the spring craft fair, the one that got rained out. I threw the whole box in the corner. Someone hadn't just been under his unit. They had been in it. They had tunneled up into 214. Arthur scrambled back to the ladder. He shined the light on the ceiling of the tunnel, just near the opening. Sure enough, another, smaller hatch, hidden by shadows. They had come down through his unit, past his failed dreams, to build their own. "We have to go," Eleanor said, her voice high and thin. "We have to go now, Arthur. This person, they're a thief. They broke in." "They're an artist," Arthur said, his eyes scanning the room. He saw something else. On the crate table, next to the lantern, was a book, a simple, black-and-white composition notebook. He picked it up. His hands, calloused and spotted, were trembling. He opened it. The first page was a sketch, a pencil drawing of the corrugated steel door of a storage unit. The second page had writing, a neat, careful script. November 4th. The light is thin today. It only comes through the gap in 112 for an hour, but I found a box of old Christmas ornaments. The red ones are like holding drops of sun. Arthur looked at Eleanor. Her face was slick with a thin sheen of sweat, visible in the flashlight's glare. "It's a journal," he said. He turned the page. November 12th. Heard the old man in 214 today. He was sitting on a stool, just sitting. He didn't even open a box. He just sat for 3 hours and looked at the wall. I think he was crying. I wish I could give him the bird, but he would be scared. Arthur's legs gave out. He sat heavily on the edge of the cot. "Ellie, he means me." Eleanor read the passage over his shoulder. Her hand gripped his shoulder so hard it hurt. "The last time we were here, before the first notice." "I was saying goodbye to the shop," Arthur whispered. He had been crying. He had been mourning his life. And this stranger had been listening. "Who is he?" Eleanor whispered. Arthur turned the pages. They were filled with observations, not of the world outside, but of the small, sad, secret world of public storage. December 1st. The weeping woman came to number 112. She brings flowers. She talks to the boxes. I think her son is in there. I made her a small angel from a Coke can, left it on her lock. She took it. She smiled. December 18th. The biker in number 230. He's selling his bike. I heard him tell his friend. He's pawning his medals. He said the metal was cold anyway. I know what he means. The metal is cold, but it remembers. I'm making him a new one, a phoenix, from the gears of his old one. He threw them in the dumpster. Page after page, a secret historian, a ghost in the concrete, watching the heartbroken, the grieving, and the broke come to visit the tombs of their past lives. And then Arthur saw his own name. January 5th, Arthur. His name is Arthur. His wife, Eleanor, called him. She's worried about his heart. I am too. He moves so slowly. He left his toolbox, the good one with the leather handle. I borrowed it. The hammer is perfect. The balance. It feels like my father's. I'm using it to make the big one, the man of wires. It's me, or maybe it's him. I don't know yet. He has your toolbox, Eleanor breathed. He has my toolbox. Arthur felt a strange, protective rage, mixed with a profound, aching pity. This man, this artist, had seen more of his real life than his own daughter had in 10 years. He flipped to the last entry. The handwriting was different, shaky, desperate. February 10th, the new manager, Davies. She changed the locks on the main gate. The code is new. I'm locked out. I'm in the shelter, but it's too loud. I can't hear the metal. Everything is in the dark. My tools, my birds, the man of wires, Arthur's hammer. I'm locked out. I just need to get my things. I have to wait for someone to open the gate, but she'll see me. She'll call the cops. It's all gone. It's all gone. The journal was signed. Thomas. Arthur and Eleanor looked at each other. The silence in the tunnel was absolute. This wasn't a thieves' den. It was a lost soul's sanctuary. And the man who built it was locked out, just as they were about to be. February 10th, Eleanor said, her voice hollow. That was 2 weeks ago. He's been trying to get back in for 2 weeks. And tomorrow, Arthur said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. The bank takes 214. They'll seal it. And Unit 112, 230. They're all on the auction block tomorrow. I saw the red tags. What about this one? Eleanor swept the light around the hidden room. Who owns this space? Nobody, Arthur said. It's just a void, a utility chase between the foundations. He found it, and he made it a home. They understood. When the bank's men came tomorrow, they would lock Arthur's unit. They would inventory it. They would find the hatch. They would find this room. And they would call it hazardous waste. They would bring a dumpster, and every piece of this man's soul, the paperclip bird, the wire man, the spoon carousel, Arthur's hammer, would be thrown away, destroyed. We can't, Eleanor whispered, her hand finding his. We can't let that happen. Arthur looked at his wife. This frail woman, who was terrified of spiders and overdue bills, was suggesting they harbor a fugitive, or at least his art. What can we do, Ellie? His voice was heavy with the reality of their 78-year-old bodies. We can't move this. Look at it. The man of wires must weigh 80 pounds. We can barely get ourselves out of here. We have to be gone by 9 a.m. We're failures, remember? No, she said. Her voice was thin, but it was steel. She wasn't the woman who had cried over the foreclosure notice. She was the woman who had raised a daughter on the seamstress's pay. She was the woman who had held him when his workshop went bankrupt. No, I am tired of being a failure. I am tired of leaving. We're not leaving this. What then? We call this Miss Davies? Tell her there's a homeless man's art under our floor? She's the one who locked him out. We find him, Eleanor said. Thomas. He's at a shelter. He said so. We find him. Find him? Ellie, we have ours. We don't even know which shelter. And what if we do? Bring him here? The cops will be here in 10 minutes. We take what we can, she said, her eyes scanning the room, already making a desperate inventory. The journal, the little bird, the small ones. It's not enough, Arthur said. He felt the weight of it. It's not right. It's his life. You don't take a man's life in pieces. He stood up, his knees screaming. He walked to the man of wires. He looked at the wooden bluebird in its chest. His bluebird. A small, discarded thing he'd made, given new life by a man he'd never met. He felt a kinship with this Thomas. 2 broken craftsmen. 2 men who had lost everything. Arthur's hammer. He walked to the workbench. There, lying in a place of honor, was his old hammer. The leather grip worn smooth. He picked it up. The weight was familiar, a perfect extension of his own arm. He had built his daughter's cradle with this hammer. He had built his failed business with this hammer. He tucked it into his belt. "No," he said, turning to Eleanor. "We don't run, and we don't steal. We wait." "Wait? For who? The auctioneer?" "For him," Arthur said, his voice raw. "For Thomas. He's trying to get in. He's watching. He has to be." He looked up at the ceiling of the bunker. "We wait for him, and we stand with him." "Arthur, that's insane! We'll be arrested!" "For what? For sitting in a dark hole? We're already ghosts, Ellie. What's the worst they can do? Throw us out? They're already doing that." He walked back to the cot and sat down. He patted the thin mattress. "We're staying. We are going to sit here in the dark, and we are going to guard this man's soul until he comes for it." Eleanor looked at him, the stubborn set of his jaw, the light in his eyes. It was the man she'd married, the one who had promised her a house on a hill. He'd never delivered the house, but here, in a concrete tomb, he was delivering the man. She nodded, pulling an old, dusty tarp off a stack of tin. She wrapped it around her shoulders. She sat down next to him. "It's cold," she whispered. "I know," he said. He took her hand. It was freezing. He reached over and clicked off the flashlight. The blackness that fell was total. It was the deepest, most profound dark they had ever known. They sat, two old, terrified, defiant people, holding hands in the cold earth, guarding a stranger's art. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. There was no time in the bunker. There was only the sound of their own breathing and the drip, drip, drip of the water into the bucket. They talked, at first in whispers, about Thomas, about the art. Then they talked about them. "I should have sold the workshop in '98, Arthur murmured, when Johnson offered. I was proud, stupid. I shouldn't have been so scared," Eleanor whispered back. "I was always clipping your wings, Art. Always be careful." "Don't risk it. I was scared of this, of being here, and my being scared is what got us here anyway. No, it was me. I wasn't strong enough." "You were," she said, her voice fierce in the dark. "You were the strongest man I ever knew. You forgot. The boxes, they weigh you down." They heard a sound. It wasn't in the bunker. It was above. The rattle of a steel door. Unit number 214. Their unit. Arthur's heart seized. He fumbled for the flashlight, his hand shaking. "It's 9 a.m., Eleanor breathed. "They're here." They heard footsteps on the concrete floor above them. Heavy. 2 pairs. "God, look at this mess," a man's voice said, gruff. "Just tag it," a woman's voice replied, cold, clinical. "Bank foreclosure. It all goes to auction." "What about this?" the first voice. "This cabinet, it's loose." They heard the scrape of the oak filing cabinet. Then the world exploded in light. A brilliant, blinding beam of a modern flashlight pinned them to the cot. "What in the—" a man yelled, stumbling back. Arthur and Eleanor just sat there, blinking like ancient moles, their hands held up to shield their eyes. "Get out!" the woman's voice commanded. "Get out of there now! This is private property!" A large man in a public storage polo shirt was glaring down at them. Beside him stood a woman in a sharp blazer, holding a clipboard like a weapon. Miss Davies, the new manager. We're not," Arthur began. "You are trespassing. And what is this?" Miss Davies shined her own light down the ladder. A tunnel? Are you living down here?" She looked disgusted. "No," Eleanor said, her voice surprisingly strong. "We're protecting." "Protecting what? This filth?" Davies' light panned across the art.
This is a biohazard. Frank, call the police. Tell them we have vagrants and God knows what else. No! Arthur roared. He hadn't roared in decades. The sound shocked him.
He got to his feet, his bad leg wobbling. He grabbed the composition notebook. This is not filth. This is a man's life. I want you out, now, Davies said, her voice flat, or you will be removed. This is art, Arthur said, climbing the ladder. He was slow, painful, but he didn't stop. When his head emerged into his own storage unit, he felt the cold morning air. The unit was full of people, auction-goers, the curious, the vultures. They were all staring at him, this old man climbing out of a hole, clutching a notebook. This is art, he said again, his voice cracking. He was standing in front of the crowd. He was humiliated. His trousers were stained with earth. "Sir, you need to leave," Miss Davies said, grabbing his arm. He shook her off. He looked at the crowd. They were just faces, blank, waiting for the next show. You come here for our junk," Arthur said, breathing hard. "You come here to buy our failures, our forgotten things." He held up the notebook. This man, his name is Thomas. He had nowhere to go, and he came here, and he took our junk, and he made this. He fumbled with the notebook, opening it. He read. His voice was shaking. December 1st. The weeping woman came to number 112. She brings flowers. I made her a small angel from a Coke can. Left it on her lock. She smiled. A woman at the front of the crowd gasped. She was a middle-aged woman in a nurse's uniform. She was holding a single wilted daisy. She was the weeping woman. He saw me? She whispered. The angel? I thought. Arthur's eyes found hers. He nodded. He turned the page. December 18th. The biker in number 230. He's selling his bike. He's pawning his medals. I'm making him a new one, a phoenix. A big man in the back, bearded, wearing a faded denim vest, pushed forward. That's my unit! How the hell? "He's an artist!" Arthur shouted, his voice finding its strength. "He's not a thief! He's a ghost! And he's been watching all of us! He's been seeing us!" He turned the page to his own entry. January 5th. Arthur. His name is Arthur. He was sitting on a stool. Just sitting. I think he was crying. I wish I could give him the bird, but he would be scared. The crowd was dead silent. Miss Davies looked uncertain. Her authority was slipping. And now, Arthur's voice dropped. Now, you, Miss Davies, you locked him out. He's at a shelter, cold, and his life is in this hole. And you were going to throw it in a dumpster? Like us, like just more trash. He was crying now, hot, angry, shameless tears. Well, I won't let you. This matters. This man matters. He stood there, this 78-year-old failure, defiant. Dad? The voice cut through the silence. Arthur's heart stopped. He turned. Standing at the edge of the crowd, her face pale, her suit perfect, was his daughter, Kathy. She was holding a briefcase. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Kathy? Eleanor whispered, climbing out of the hole behind him, her hands covered in dirt. I got the notice, Dad, the final one. I flew in from Chicago.
What is happening? Kathy looked at the hole, at her parents, at the angry manager. This woman, Arthur said, pointing at Davies, she's throwing away a man's life. Kathy looked at her father. He wasn't the slumped, defeated man she'd spoken to on the phone. He was burning. He was a prophet. She stepped forward, her heels clicking on the concrete. She dropped her briefcase. She looked at Miss Davies. "I'm Catherine Miller," she said, her voice pure ice. "I'm Mr. and Mrs. Miller's attorney. What exactly is the problem here? Your parents are trespassing? They've dug a tunnel. They're harboring a vagrant. This is a
criminal matter, Davies stammered, regrouping. A tunnel they dug? Kathy raised an eyebrow. My 78-year-old father, who has a pin in his leg, and my 76-year-old mother, they dug this? With what? Their bare hands? The crowd chuckled. And harboring? Kathy continued, stepping toward the hole. She looked down. She saw the art. Her face softened for just a second. These are artworks. This journal, this is a record. This isn't abandoned property. This is a collection. You have no right to throw it in a dumpster. This is an informal bailment. You seize this, you're committing theft. It was a bluff. A beautiful, perfect, legal bluff. Miss Davies' face went white. This is irregular. It's highly irregular, Kathy said. She turned to her father. Dad, where is he? The artist? A shelter, Arthur said, his mind racing. The shelter. Which one? He didn't say. It's okay. Kathy turned to the crowd. Does anyone? The weeping woman, the biker. Have you seen this man? A thin man watching? The biker nodded slowly. Yeah, sometimes. Over by the gate. Looks lost. I've seen him at the St. Jude's shelter, over on 14th. Kathy pulled out her phone. She looked at Miss Davies. We are going to get him. You are not to touch this unit. You are not to touch that hole. You are not to touch anything. If one paperclip is missing, You'll sue, Arthur finished for her. Kathy smiled at him. A real, brilliant smile. Yeah, I'll sue. Dad, Mom, let's go. Go, Arthur said. But the unit? I paid it, Kathy said, so softly only he and Eleanor could hear. I paid the back rent. It's yours. It's fine. Let's go find Thomas. Arthur and Eleanor stood at the curb of the St. Jude shelter. It was a low, gray building that smelled of bleach and despair. Kathy was inside, talking to the administrator. She's something, isn't she? Arthur said, wiping his eyes. She's yours, Art, Eleanor said, leaning her head on his shoulder. The door opened. Kathy came out, followed by a man. He was thin, so thin, maybe 40, with a beard matted with, was that paint? He wore a thin army jacket, and his eyes were terrified. He was scanning the street like a rabbit sensing a hawk. Mr. Miller? He whispered. Arthur stepped forward. Thomas? The man flinched. He looked at Arthur. His eyes darted to Arthur's belt. My hammer, Thomas whispered. You have my hammer. Arthur's hand went to the hammer. I borrowed it back. Thomas just stared. We found your studio, son, Arthur said, his voice gentle. We found the journal, the birds. Thomas's face crumpled. He began to cry. Not loud sobs, but silent, agonizing tears that carved clean tracks through the grime on his face. They threw it away. I knew it. They threw it all away. No, Eleanor said, stepping forward. She reached into the deep pocket of her coat. She pulled out the small paperclip and foil songbird. We saved this, she said. We guarded it. Thomas looked at the bird.
His hand, cracked and black with grease, reached out. He took it. He held it like it was a living thing. It's all there, son," Arthur said. "Miss Davies, she's waiting. She'll let you in. You can get your things." Thomas looked from Arthur to Eleanor, and then to Kathy, who was standing back, watching, her own eyes bright. Why?" Thomas whispered. Arthur looked at his hands. "Because," he said, his voice thick, "because I carve wood. I know what it's like to have the shape in your hands, and I know what it's like to lose it." He unhooked the hammer from his belt. He held it out, handle first. This is yours, I think," Arthur said. You made it. Talk. I just made it. Hit nails." Thomas looked at the hammer. He looked at Arthur. He didn't take it. Instead, he took a step forward, and this thin, broken stranger, he wrapped his arms around Arthur. He buried his face in Arthur's flannel shirt, and he wept. Arthur, shocked, stood stiff for a moment. Then his own arms came up. He held this man. He held this artist, this ghost, and patted his back. It's okay, son," Arthur whispered. It's all okay now. We're going home." The light of the setting sun was low, painting the rows of orange and blue storage doors in shades of fire. The air was cold, sharp. Unit number 214 was almost empty. Kathy, Arthur, and Eleanor had spent the day packing, but they weren't packing to move, they were packing to leave. The boxes marked unsold and failed had been taken to Goodwill. The filing cabinet had been hauled away for scrap. The only things left were 3 boxes of photo albums and 1 small, sealed box marked Mama's Silver. Kathy was loading them into the trunk of her rental car, a big, clean sedan. "You're sure, Dad?" she asked, hoisting an album. "You don't want to keep the unit? I can pay for it." Arthur shook his head. He was standing by the open door, looking at the empty space. "No, Katie, it's just a box. We don't live here anymore." Eleanor came over and took his arm. In the unit next door, number 216, the biker's old unit, a different kind of moving was happening. The weeping woman and the biker, along with 2 volunteers from the shelter, were helping Thomas move his art. Miss Davies had, under Kathy's icy legal stare, found a vacant, heated main floor unit for Thomas. A gesture of community goodwill, she'd called it. Thomas was directing them, his voice, though soft, full of a new, quiet authority. The man of wires needs to be braced. Careful, careful." The tunnel was empty. Arthur had gone down one last time. He'd stood in the bunker, empty now, save for the drip, drip of the water. It was just a hole again. They'd sealed the hatch. "Ready, Mom? Dad?" Kathy shut the trunk. Arthur looked at Eleanor. Her hair was a mess. Her face was smudged with dust. He had never loved her more. "I'm ready," Eleanor said. They walked to the car. As they passed Miss Davies' office, she watched them, her face a mask of annoyance. Arthur just nodded at her. He got in the passenger seat, his bad legs stiff. Eleanor got in the back. Kathy started the car. As they pulled away, driving slowly down the long aisle of identical doors, Arthur looked back at Unit 214. It was just an empty, dark rectangle. Eleanor leaned forward from the back seat. We forgot the flashlight, Art. The yellow one. It's still in there." Arthur smiled. He looked at his wife in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were clear. "No, Ellie," he said, his voice soft. I think we just found it." He opened his hand. He'd been clutching it tight. In his palm, Catching the last fiery glint of the setting sun was the small metal songbird. Thomas had pressed it into his hand. For watching him, he said. For the hammer. Arthur closed his hand around it. The metal was cold, but it felt alive. Kathy reached over and put her hand on his. We're going to my place, Dad. I have a spare room, a big one, and a workshop in the garage, if you want it. Arthur looked at his daughter, at her strong, capable hands. He looked at his own, empty, and then at the one clutching the bird. "Yeah, Katie girl," he whispered, as the car turned out of the storage lot, leaving the past behind. I think I'd like that."